Chapter 23. After the interview, Margaret couldn't stop worrying. When she got Artie alone, she gave him a tongue lashing. "There was only one thing we told you not to do," Margaret whispered fiercely. "One thing that could ruin everything." Arthur kept his eyes on the floor. "There are a million rats in this city," Margaret went on. "They live in the sewer systems, in the old buildings, in the trash. They don't have anything to do with rats like Christopher and Nicodemus." Arthur's eyes filled with tears. "You could have told me," he thought. "Stop." "We only asked you to keep one secret," Margaret said. "We thought you could do that much." "I can keep a secret," Arthur thought. He thought about the special place under the oak tree and the secret in his closet. But of course, he couldn't tell Margaret about that. What? It was lonely having a secret. As the days turned into weeks, Margaret wished she could be like Artie, who had blurted it out in one split second. But Artie was lucky. No one expected a little kid to make sense. She was different. She had to lie. And the worst part was lying to Leon. She thought of Nicodemus and wondered where he was. He'd told her it would be hard, but she hadn't believed him. "I'll never tell," she'd shouted, but he hadn't expected that of her. "Do the best you can," he'd said. Sometimes at night she talked to Artie about the rats. She'd sneak into his room when she was supposed to be doing her homework and sit down on the floor. "Remember the time when you and Christopher and I had a picnic in the garden?" she'd begin. Arthur would smile sleepily. "Remember the party after I moved the nest, when we all danced together? Remember the acorn bread Isabella made? Remember what it was like sleeping in the hut at night?" After she'd talked for a minute or two, Arthur would be asleep. Sometimes she kept on talking anyway. It felt good to say the things she thought about out loud, even if he couldn't hear them. It was like sharing the secret. Sometimes she worried that Arthur would forget about the rats. Then she would really be alone. "Do the best you can." Margaret thought about Nicodemus and marked off the days on her calendar. She had kept the secret 2 whole weeks, then 3. Sometimes she felt like a bomb about to explode. Other days she felt as fragile as a glass jar. If someone bumped her, she would break. Then the news would come trickling out for everyone to know. One day when she was riding in the car with her mom, she almost told. That morning her parents had given her a present, a Walkman. "I've noticed you've developed an interest in classical music," her mom said, smiling. Margaret blanched. She'd been turning on the radio at night because she felt too guilty sitting with her parents watching TV. They were so nice to her now. They couldn't stop asking, "Want some popcorn, Margaret? Is this the show you want to watch? How about a Coke?" The truth was, she hadn't even noticed what station the radio was on. They drove downtown to buy some tapes. On the way, they passed the newspaper office. "I've thought a lot about that evening when we met with the reporter," her mom said. "Arthur was more affected by the interview than he let on. He called that rat as if it were a pet." She glanced at Margaret. "You never talked about having a pet in the valley." "We didn't. It was hard to find enough food for ourselves. I thought maybe there'd been a stray dog or cat, something like that." "No." Margaret kept her eyes straight ahead. "He was so distressed after he'd called to it. It was as if he'd done something terrible." "Who knows? Artie's strange." Margaret tried to act bored, but a little voice inside her said, "Lying again?" She squirmed in her seat. Her mom noticed that because she said, "Don't worry about it, honey." Margaret nodded. She tried to smile. "Artie is sort of strange." Her mom smiled too. "Just think of all the animals to like." She shuddered. "Maybe rats aren't that bad," Margaret said weakly. I think, oh, they are. They live off garbage and they carry disease. In the Middle Ages, they spread bubonic plague all through Europe. Oh, Margaret sat still, hating herself. She couldn't even stick up for Nicodemus and Raxo and Christopher, who had saved her life. Do the best you can. She marked another day off on the calendar. That was the day she'd found out her mom wouldn't want to know the truth, even if Margaret could tell her. Would it be the same with her dad? He asked more questions, but when he saw her getting upset, he'd always stop. All that really counts, that you're okay, he'd say. He and her mom usually stuck together, almost as if they were one person instead of two. Margaret sighed. The secret hurt inside her, like a stomachache. Leon was sitting in the middle of a pile of books and magazines, reading. At first, he looked happy to see her, but then he seemed to remember that they weren't good friends anymore, and his eyes grew wary. Margaret smiled deliberately. What are you doing? Mom told me to sort the stuff out. It's my science fiction collection, and these science magazines came from Grams. They were in her attic. I remember. We used to lie up there and look at the pictures. Right. Leon blinked. We had a lot of fun at her house. Yeah, she let us do anything. She understood us. Leon paused. His voice was low. I used to think she'd live forever, like Gandalf. I thought she'd always be around when I needed her. And if it seemed like she wasn't, she'd show up anyway, just at the last moment. She'd tell me how to get out of danger. Or maybe she'd lead me into danger, but just enough so that I could get out of it myself. Leon held a book tight between his knees. You know what? Margaret's voice trembled. I knew somebody else like that. You did? She nodded. He may be dead now, but he was wonderful. What was his name? Nicodemus. I'll bet he's one of the ones you met this summer. She nodded. I'll bet he was a wizard, and only kids could see him. I don't know about that. There weren't any grown-ups there. Not human ones, anyway. He wasn't human? No. What was he then? Margaret felt the same dull pain in her stomach. I'm not supposed to tell. Why not? Like I said before, I have to protect them. Leon stared. They're aliens, aren't they? Like E.T.? No. Margaret squirmed. Leon, I'm not supposed to tell. But I'm just a kid. They like kids. They took care of you and Artie. She nodded dumbly. I want to meet Nicodemus, Leon said. If he's still alive, that is. You can't, Margaret said. She felt like crying. Why not? He's gone away. There was something he had to do before he died. What? I can't tell you anything else. Don't ask me, please. I want to know. Leon was staring at her. I can't tell you. I can't tell you anything else. Chapter 24. It was Artie who noticed the calendar. He had snuck into Margaret's room while she was at school. He climbed up on the desk to reach the highest shelf of her bookcase, where she kept her baseball card collection. That was when he saw it. All the other days were marked over with an X, but not this one. It had a bright red circle around it. He wanted to show her as soon as she got home from school, but Leon was there. So he kept coming into the bedroom and looking right at her, so she'd know there was something important. After a while, she got annoyed. What is it, Artie? Why do you keep hanging around? He looked at her, then toward the desk. But it was Leon who saw the red circle. What's so important about today? I don't know. Margaret came closer. Did you do that, Artie? You know you're not supposed to touch my stuff. Her voice died suddenly. She looked at Leon. There's nothing at all important about today, she said. It's just Artie playing around with my magic markers. Next time I'm telling Mom, she added threateningly. Now get out of here. He went to his room smiling. He sat down to wait. They came when he was supposed to be asleep. There was a tug on the blanket. Then a nose and whiskers appeared over the side of the bed. You're here! Artie held Christopher tight. Raxo stood nearby, grinning. Does Margaret know? Arthur nodded and pointed toward her bedroom. Go get her, Raxo whispered. But be quiet. Margaret had to keep herself from running down the hall to Arthur's room. Once inside, she flung her arms around Raxo. She wanted to tell him everything, but instead she just looked at him. Raxo stuck his chest out. We arrived this morning. We snuck in quietly, but it turned out no one was home. We had some potato chips and a few malted milk balls, and I showed Christopher how to work the TV. Then we came upstairs and looked around. And circled the date on my calendar. Raxo laughed. I've thought of someplace wonderful to take you. We can go now, if you want, said Margaret. Maybe we should talk first. Christopher spoke up from Arthur's shoulder. That's what Justin told us to do. Stop reminding me what Justin told us. I know what Justin told us. You don't act like you know. Shh. Margaret tried to calm them down. You'll wake up my parents. Anyway, I have to tell you something. She described what had happened in the parking lot. What did the reporter say afterward? She asked me who Christopher was. I told her that Artie has imaginary friends and that he used to talk to them in the valley. Then she asked why he'd say, I told, and I said I didn't know. What was the reporter's name? Lindsay something. Lindsay Scott, I think. Lindsay Scott. She's the one who came down our stream in a canoe. She found out that the man who was building the dam was a crook, and they stopped the project. She helped us. I remember her, Christopher said. She was wearing a green coat, and she had things in front of her eyes. Elvira said they were called glasses, and they were to help her see better. I'll tell Justin and Beatrice, Raxo promised. Is there anything else? Margaret hesitated. Leon knows I didn't tell the whole truth. He knows Artie and I didn't survive on our own, that there was someone who helped us, but he doesn't know who. And he's only a kid, like me. She paused. I almost told him, she admitted. But you didn't. That was good. I kept remembering what Nicodemus said. Do the best you can. I wonder where he is now. I wonder whether he got to the ocean. Raxo sighed. I miss him. So do I. Margaret couldn't keep the sadness out of her voice. She told them about Nicodemus leaving, just limping away into the brush without looking back. When she told about it, she began to cry. What's wrong? Christopher's voice was gentle. Nobody knows you're real, Margaret sobbed. Nobody but me and Artie. Later, when she felt better, Margaret tucked Raxo and Christopher into her gym bag and took everyone on the subway. It was so late they were the only ones in the car. Arthur had pulled a heavy sweater over his pajamas. Margaret brought money and a package of peanut butter crackers, which they ate on the way. This stop, she said. She led them part way down an alley beside a tall wire fence and showed them a hole where the mesh had come unfastened from a metal post. Raxo and Christopher darted through, and then Arthur crawled through on his hands and knees. Margaret slid through on her belly and took them to a round hut with flags on the top. She lifted Raxo up so that he was looking into a face with evil eyes and flaring nostrils. He screamed. "I'm sorry." She held him close. "I didn't know you'd think it was real. See, it's made of wood." Raxo stared. All around him were wooden faces, and beneath the faces were bodies, some with long, skinny legs, some with humps, some with painted saddles. "It's a merry-go-round," Margaret explained. "A merry-go-round? Is this?" "An amusement park. It's closed at night, so there's no guard. And Leon discovered the hole in the fence." Raxo's heart swelled. "It's like a dream come true." "I knew you'd love it," Margaret grinned. "So here we are." Christopher leaped from an elephant's trunk to the back of a Bengal tiger. "Look at me, Artie," he shrieked. "I'm riding on a tiger. I'm taming a wild zebra. I'm floating on a swan." He climbed into the central cylinder of the merry-go-round to see how it worked. In a minute, they heard the tinkle of music, and the wooden stage lurched. Margaret boosted Arthur onto an ostrich. She rode a bear, and Raxo rode in the pouch of a kangaroo. Then they switched around, and then they switched again. Christopher made the carousel speed up, and they clung tight to their animals. Then he made them go around backward. "What next?" Raxo jumped off a billy goat and landed running. "This way?" "This way," Margaret pointed. "We can play the fishing game." Margaret had chosen the fishing game because it was Arthur's favorite. She let him show the others what to do. First, he gave everyone a fishing rod. Then he let out his line until the hook floated among the little fish in a rubber tub. He got one by its nose, reeled it in, and held it up for Margaret to read. "Regular prize. That means you get one of these, Artie." She handed him a bottle of bubble soap. "You try it, Christopher." The fishing pole was 3 times Christopher's size, but he managed to reel in a fish. He read the tag on the bottom. Regular prize. Next, Margaret won a bottle of bubble soap. Then Raxo threw his line in and swirled it around and around until he caught a bright blue fish. "Grand prize!" Margaret was jealous. She'd always wanted to win the grand prize herself. She stood up on a chair and took down a gigantic stuffed cat. Raxo and Christopher climbed its plush shoulders and stared into its marble eyes. They looked inside its ears and felt its long whiskers. "I've never seen a cat before," Christopher whispered. "I want to take it home and put it on the playground." Christopher stood up on the cat's head. "The other rats—" "We can't take it," Raxo interrupted. "These games cost money, and we haven't paid anything." Christopher was crestfallen. "But we don't have any money." "I do." Margaret looked thoughtful. "But not a whole lot." "We better put it back." Raxo remembered what Beatrice had said. "Don't steal anything." "Maybe Margaret can pay for one of the regular prizes." And that was what they ended up doing. Then Arthur showed Raxo and Christopher how to blow bubbles. Christopher held the wand in his tail and waved it back and forth over Raxo's head, and Raxo popped the bubbles with his nose. Then Margaret showed them how to blow slowly and steadily to make a really big bubble, and they let that one go, gliding high into the darkness. "Hungry," Artie said softly. "Me too. I haven't had anything since those peanut butter crackers. But this is locked." Margaret pushed at the door of a wooden kiosk. "I think I can crawl in the vent." Raxo pointed out a metal cylinder at the top of the booth. Margaret lifted him up, and he scrambled through and down the window to the door, where he slid the bolt back. Let's see what's on the menu. Hot dogs, hamburgers, cotton candy, pizza, milkshakes, French fries, soda, candy bars. I'll have one of each. Raxo grinned. Me too. How about you, Artie? Pizza. Margaret? She put some money on the counter. I'll have an extra large grape soda, French fries, and a cheeseburger. They took turns playing host. Margaret figured out how to work the griddle, while Arthur shaped the hamburgers. Christopher filled the cone with pink cotton candy. Raxo threw French fries one by one into the fryer. Margaret slid a frozen pizza into the oven. Dinner at 8, she announced, bowing low to her company. Dinner at 9. Raxo swept off his beret and graciously kissed Christopher on the paw. Dinner at 10. Christopher planted a kiss on Arthur's nose. Arthur giggled. They spread the feast on the floor and helped themselves. Arthur showed them how to dip French fries in ketchup and helped Christopher clean wads of cotton candy off his whiskers. Raxo's stomach bulged from candy and milkshakes and pizza. Margaret had polished off her soda and most of her cheeseburger and was lying on the floor with her chin between her hands. That was when the thought hit her. When will you be back? I don't know. We didn't talk to Justin and Beatrice about that. I want you to. You're my best friends now. You and Nicodemus. And he's gone. They were quiet. Sadness fell over the group. It could be months, even a year, before they saw each other again. Raxo tried to break the mood. Wait till the rats at home hear about this meal. They'll be so jealous. They're probably eating acorn bread and carrot sticks right now. Even Margaret had to smile at the comparison. Rat food isn't my idea of great eating, that's for sure. If only we had a way to remember tonight. There is a way. Margaret was on her feet. Quick, let's clean this place up, and I'll show you. The others didn't recognize the metal stall with pictures stuck on the sides and a sign that said 4 for $1. Margaret had to explain it. We put the money in the slot and jump inside. There's a camera hidden behind that wall, and it'll take our pictures. Margaret settled Arthur on the seat with Christopher and Raxo in his arms. She stuck the dollar in and got in herself. Flash! That was one picture. She grinned and moved closer to Artie and the rats. Flash! There was another. They waved hands and paws for the third. Then Artie shouted, Me and Christopher! So Margaret and Raxo ducked outside. Waiting for the pictures seemed to take forever, but when they slid out the little slot, they were perfect. Here was Raxo, his beret cocked at just the right angle, his face peering out beside Margaret's chin. Arthur and Christopher looked as if they belonged together, and there was a picture for each of them. Wait till the others see this. Raxo waved his in the air, as if he were already showing it off to the rats in the valley. Margaret didn't say anything, but she wrapped the photo lovingly in a Kleenex and put it in her gym bag. We'd better head for home, she said softly. Artie will fall asleep on his feet if we don't leave soon. They were headed back to the hole in the fence when Christopher noticed the set of keys hanging from the starter of the tilt-a-whirl. Someone must have left them there by accident, Margaret said. It's just asking for us to ride it, please. I guess one ride wouldn't hurt anything, Margaret said. In fact, they rode on the tilt-a-whirl 5 times. The first time, Christopher was so scared he really didn't enjoy it. The second time, they enjoyed it so much they thought they'd better do it once more. The third time, Arthur threw up. The fourth time, they gave themselves a treat after cleaning up the mess that Arthur had made, but he sat on the bench outside, looking sad. The fifth time, they rode it together one last time. By the time they crawled through the fence, it was very late, and when they got to the subway stop, a metal grate had been pulled across the entrance. "We'll have to take a taxi," Margaret said. "I've got a couple more dollars in my pocket." She tucked the rats into the gym bag. Luckily, a cab came around the corner just then. Margaret helped Arthur into the back seat and put the bag in between them. "Out late for your age, aren't you?" The driver was a black man with a kindly face. He looked concerned. "Yes," Margaret thought fast. "Family emergency, you see." "Emergency?" "My mom had a baby." "Oh!" The driver's face brightened. "Boy or girl?" "Girl. Her name's Edna." "Congratulations." "Thanks."
"What does the little fella think of her?"
"Oh, Artie? He thinks she's adorable."
"Great.
The cab driver seemed genuinely happy for them.
Makes for a nice family when nobody's jealous."
"This is our house." Margaret gave the driver the rest of her money, which included a 35-cent tip. She led Arthur around to the back door. It was unlocked as they had left it. They crept upstairs, pausing at the door of her parents' bedroom. Snores. She helped Arthur pull off his sweater. She made Raxo a nest at the foot of her mattress. Then she put on her nightgown and settled into bed. "This was one of the best nights in my whole life," she whispered. "Good night." She switched off the light on the bedside table. Arthur and Christopher stayed up. Arthur showed the rat his favorite toys and books. Then he took him into the back of his closet, under the eaves. It was time to show Christopher the secret. At first, Christopher didn't know what to say. Then he remembered how, when he was very small, he used to make marks in the sand beside the creek with a sharp stick. He pretended he was making lists, the way his own father listed the bins of grain and vegetables for Nicodemus each fall.
"It's writing, isn't it?"
he asked softly. Arthur nodded solemnly. Behind him, the wall was covered with marks, loops and squiggles, straight and crooked lines. There was a mark for everything that had ever happened to Arthur, the good things and the bad ones, too. "I did it all by myself," he said. He showed Christopher the part about being a baby and getting sick and going to the hospital for shots. He showed him where he and Margaret got lost and found the valley and met the rats. Beyond that, the wall was blank. There was a small window at the back of the eaves, and on the windowsill was a black crayon. Arthur picked it up and made a mark on the wall.
"That's about our visit, isn't it?"
Arthur nodded. He'd known Christopher would understand.
"And the blank spaces for all the other things that will happen to us. Remember the Brave Explorers Club? Well, the meeting we'll have tonight won't be the last one. I don't plan to stay in Thorn Valley all my life. When I'm grown up, I'm going to travel all around the world. You can come with me, Artie."
Christopher's voice had grown hushed.
"We'll go by bus and train and car, and when we come to the ocean, we'll get on a boat and sail to new places. We'll see everything there is to see, animals and people and plants and mountains and deserts. You'll be able to talk then, and we'll talk, and we'll write down our adventures, just the way you have here."
Arthur nodded.
"The Brave Explorers will hold their next meeting right now," Christopher said. "Let it come to order, please."
It was late when Arthur went to bed. He knew Christopher would leave before he woke up. He hugged his friend and kissed the top of his furry head. They looked out the window at the gray dawn to the east. In the dim light, they didn't see the figure behind the lamppost. watching them. Chapter 25. Lindsay Scott couldn't get the incident in the parking lot out of her mind. She described it to her boss, Dave Castle, while he leaned back in his chair, puffing on a cigar. Dave was cynical. "The kids cooked up a plan to get a little more attention, Lindsay. Forget about it." But she couldn't forget about it. For one thing, there was the way the girl had answered the question, as if she'd figured out each answer ahead of time, and the boy had cried, "I told." But what had he told? And there was the rats. There were thousands of them in the city, and that one hadn't seemed any different from the rest. But the spring the dam was being built in Thorn Valley, there had been talk of rats too. So much talk that Lindsay had finally written an article about all the rumors. Now she typed something into her computer. It purred and spat out a length of paper. Rumor Ties Rats to Dam Problems by Lindsay Scott. Interviews with workmen at the site of the now defunct Thorn Valley Dam suggest a curious culprit for the continuing problems there: rodents. 2 night watchmen assigned to the dam's computer headquarters described finding 2 rats there, and in separate interviews agree that one of them, described as short and wearing a small black hat, had written the word "stop" on a piece of paper in the office. Another construction worker described finding the body of a charred rodent adjacent to a severed electric line. The resulting blackout kept the dam from opening as scheduled. Still, another worker said he saw rodent-like tracks on the floor near the emergency generators, which also failed the day the dam was scheduled to open. Lindsay put the paper on her desk and stood up. Outside the office window, the branches of a small tree broke the sky behind it into fragments, the pieces of a puzzle. If you moved to a different spot, the sky would be whole again, the puzzle complete. The interviews at the dam site, the girl's story, the rat in the alley, Arthur's "I told," these were also pieces in a puzzle. Lindsay rearranged them in her mind, thinking, where do I go from here? "You're crazy," Dave said, when she told him what she was thinking about. But it was he who suggested the phone calls. "Rats are thieves," he said. "If there are rats near the valley, the farmers are probably being robbed blind. Call them up and ask them." She almost gave up. She had to get maps and then call the state tax office to find out who owned the land around there. Looking at the map, she thought the valley seemed so remote that nothing there would affect farmers on the other side of the mountains. But it was an idea, and right now it was the only idea she had. She picked up the phone. 4 calls later, she was more discouraged than ever. All the farms had rats, and if she thought there was something unusual about them, she must have been watching too much Walt Disney. One farmer had hung up in disgust. There was one number left. The name beside it seemed familiar: Paul Fitzgibbon. But it was his wife who answered the phone. "Rats?" she said. "Oh, yes, we've had a lot of rats. Rats and mice. But anywhere you have corn and silage, you're going to have rats." "Anything peculiar?" "Not really. Not that she could rightly recall. Of course, the whole thing with the children coming back the way they did, that had been strange. But she counted it a miracle. She was a believer. There had been other times when they themselves had been blessed. When the dam got closed down, for instance, why, they would have had to sell their land, even though it had been in the family for 3 generations. "About the rats," Lindsay repeated. "Has there been anything peculiar about the rats?" "Oh, the rats." Mrs. Fitzgibbon paused. Like I told you, we have them, but there's nothing special about them. We know that because one day, a couple of years ago, some scientists came out here and tried to trap some of the big ones that lived under my rose bush. There was something particular they were looking for, but they never told us what. But the nest was full of garbage, and all the rats got away but one. They were awfully disappointed. Though one they did get, Lindsay asked. Was there anything unusual about it? They never told us, Mrs. Fitzgibbon said. But when they saw the nest all full of rotten food, they shook their heads. They won't be living that way, not now, one of them said. Not if it was them. I wonder what they meant by that. The woman's voice over the phone was puzzled too. They didn't say. In fact, they were right secretive about what they were looking for. Do you remember their names? No, I sure don't. But they were from some big laboratory, government owned, I believe. It had letters for its name. She thought aloud. What was it now? N-I something? NIH? Lindsay caught her breath. She had a feeling that a piece of the puzzle was about to slide into place. That would be the National Institute of Health? It wasn't that. Mrs. Fitzgibbon sounded certain. There were 4 letters, as I recall. N-I-M-H. I believe it was. NIM. It's been a few years, so I'm surprised I can recollect it. But I'll never forget how disappointed they were when they saw that garbage. I don't know what they expected, but it wasn't that. The, the guy at NIM was real excited that I called, Lindsay told Dave in the lunchroom. He wanted to come down and talk to the kids right away.
You're kidding.
She shook her head. He said, you don't understand what it would mean to find those animals. The discovery would shock the scientific world.
So, when's he coming?
Oh, Lindsay seemed a little embarrassed. He isn't. I told him not to.
Why not?
Because we don't have any facts.
But suppose it is true.
Dave wrinkled his heavy brows.
Suppose it's true, and he goes to another paper with the information, and they print it first.
Lindsay shrugged. I'm not going to write an article unless I know what it says is true.
You ought to lean on those kids. Question them again.
I'm thinking about calling up the girl, Margaret, but I have to figure out exactly what to ask first. I don't want to pressure her.
Let the scientist question her, Dave said. What's his name?
Dr. Schultz. Lindsay finished her coffee and pushed herself back from the table. We could end up looking pretty foolish if we're not careful about this. I don't plan to move too fast.
Just don't let another paper get it first. That's all I'm saying. If there's something to it, we ought to publish it first.